Welcome again, friends. From the previous session we have seen about the lung vascular diseases, and as a definition in the medical term that comprise a group of diseases that affect the blood vessels that are going to or returning from the lungs. And I have said that we are going to look for each disease and a short description about that disease. And today we will start with pulmonary edema. The word edema means accumulation of fluid. So the term pulmonary edema means accumulation of fluid within the lungs. As you see, these x-rays show that these lungs are abnormal enlarged. It means there is accumulation of fluid within these lungs. By definition, pulmonary edema is a condition caused by excess fluid in the lungs, as I have said. And what are the causes of pulmonary edema? The causes of pulmonary edema are grouped into two groups. Maybe the pulmonary edema may be resulted from an increased pulmonary hydrostatic pressure, or second may be due to increased capillary permeability. On starting with increased pulmonary hydrostatic pressure. Hydrostatic pressure means that is a pressure that is generated by the presence of water within the blood vessels. So it means pulmonary hydrostatic pressure is the pressure that will force out fluid from the blood vessels into the alveolar tissues. And this as I have notified you that you have to understand better about the systemic and the pulmonary circulation of the body. And the pulmonary hydrostatic pressure that the most common cause of the pulmonary edema, which is caused by various factors, and we are going through about the first one, which is heart failure, and commonly is left ventricular failure. As I've said, that the left ventricle it's pump the blood to the aorta, which then go to the other tissues of the body. So if there will be the left ventricular failure, it means the blood will not be properly pumped to the other tissues of the body. So what next? It means there will be accumulation of fluid of blood in the left ventricle, and then the blood will continue to be accumulated even to the lungs, because here there will be the fluid accumulated. So even it means in the left ventricle blood will be accumulated, and therefore the blood from the left heart will fail to enter the left ventricle, since in the left ventricle there is accumulation of fluid. So what will be built up here? Within the lung blood vessel there will be built up of a high hydrostatic pressure, and the build-up of high hydrostatic pressure will then force the fluid out of the blood vessels, which then will go into the alveolar and cause alveolar destruction and alveolar edema. Yes. Another factor is the mitral stenosis. What is mitral stenosis? These the obstruction that result from the failure of proper action of the valves of the left atrioventricular septum, and this will cause the same as the build-up of high hydrostatic pressure in the lungs blood vessels, and then will force out fluid and then cause alveolar edema, or total general the lung edema. And there is the pulmonary vein obstruction. You see, pulmonary vein obstruction, let's here discuss about the left pulmonary vein. The left pulmonary vein is the vein that returns the oxygenated blood from the lungs to enter the left ventricle. So if there will be an obstruction here, it means the fluid will accumulate. It means the blood will still within the blood vessels of the lungs and will accumulate a lot, and then will build up a high hydrostatic pressure, which will then force out the fluid into the alveolus, which will cause the lung edema or pulmonary edema. Another issue is about thyrotoxicosis. Thyrotoxicosis, it means that there is abnormality secretion of thyroid hormone by thyroid gland. It means this condition is mostly caused by hyperthyroidism. Hyperthyroidism would cause abnormal function of the heart, abnormal pumping of blood by the heart, which will the same ways cause accumulation. It means okay, let's see, tell me the concept of that. Thyrotoxicosis, which is hyperthyroidism, will cause abnormal contraction of the heart, which will then lead to heart failure, especially the left ventricular failure. And I have explained earlier that the failure of blood to be pumped from the left ventricle to the systemic parts of the body will cause the accumulation of fluid from the left ventricle and the left pulmonary vein. Even from the blood vessels of the lungs, the fluid will accumulate, and then there will be build up of high hydrostatic pressure, which will cause fluid to be forced from the blood vessels into the alveolar interstitials, and then cause alveolar damage. And the trend is that the increase in pressure in the pulmonary vein will cause an interstitial edema. An interstitial edema causes alveolar destruction, which then causes alveolar damage. Okay, let's come to the another concept, which is the second cause of the pulmonary edema, which is increased vascular permeability. This is the condition that can be termed as irritant edema. Why is it termed as irritant edema? Because the vascular permeability is increased after the inflammation of the lung vessels. It means there will be inflammation of the lung vessels, and then after the inflammation of these lung vessels, there will be the fluid that will go out of the lung vessel and then build up within the interstitial parts of the lungs, even in the alveolus, which will cause alveolar destruction, and then will cause the alveolar edema. And here, for the case of inflammation, we have chemical mediator. That it means there will be the production of chemical mediator that will produce endothelial contraction and vasodilation in order to allow the escape of fluid from the lung vessels to the interstitial parts, to the alveolus. There are several factors that cause vascular permeability, as we have learned from the first part about the chemical mediator that regulate inflammation within the body of an organism. And these factors, we have infection like microorganism, for example bacteria, fungus, and virus. Toxins, for example bacteria toxin, aspiration, shock, uremia, and also there are some radiation like X-rays, gamma rays, and finally we have hypersensitivity, example immune reaction like anaphylactic reaction. These cause the production of chemical mediator that will produce endothelial contraction and vasodilation, and these will lead to the escape of fluid from the lung vessels into the interstitial parts of the lungs. The lungs will cause interstitial edema, will cause the alveolar damage, and then will cause alveolar edema. Okay, another cause is about acute high altitude edema. This is caused due to sudden climb of a mountain. For example, a mountain which is higher than 2,500 meter, and which will cause anoxic damage to the pulmonary vessels, hence edema to the interstitial and the alveolar spaces. By saying so, today we will end up here about the pulmonary edema, and don't forget to subscribe in order to get more updates, because we have a group of these diseases, and that is was the first disease, and there are other diseases that follow. So to subscribe, you will get more updates about the groups of diseases. Thank you.